Hello and welcome to Chase on the Case. Today I want to share some thoughts with you about what the new normal might look like when the hospitality and licensed retail sectors start to reopen in the wake of the pandemic. I anticipate that we will see a substantial loosening of restrictions from Easter 2021 onwards. But I don't think that the new world of licensing is going to look the same as the old world. And to understand why that is, you need to understand the pernicious influence of the new public health movement on government and on government policy. And there is a very long history to this. If you look at the history of the last 8 months, and you focus upon our Chief Medical Officer of Health, Professor Chris Whitty, he kind of exemplifies the attitude of the new public health movement to the governance of society. And that's what it's about. It's not just about improving the health of the public, it's about using public health in every policy to govern society in a different way. And you can see that Professor Whitty, who I don't doubt is a man of good intentions, is somebody who is extremely risk averse, is wedded to the idea that we need to have whole population policies to restrict human activity in order to maintain the health of that population. So by its very nature, the modern public health movement is antithetical to freedom of choice and freedom of the individual. And also, I think, antithetical to the free movement of the market and the free operation of the market. And I don't think that this influence is going to come to an end just because we start to reopen the economy from Easter onwards. So what will the new normal look like, and what sort of influence will the modern public health movement have upon government policy moving forward? I think a number of things will happen. Firstly, I think we're going to see a fifth licensing objective introduced. At the moment, the Licensing Act 2003, which operates in England and Wales, has 4 licensing objectives. In Scotland, they have a promotion of public health licensing objective, and it's no secret that Professor Whitty is in favour of a public health licensing objective here in England and Wales too. Even when that happens, it opens the door to a number of national licensing conditions that government might want to introduce, or which local licensing authorities might introduce as a matter of policy. I think the enhanced hygiene regimes will stay. I think we may well see, at least for some time, table service only in pubs and bars. And I can certainly see that having a vaccine certificate will be necessary to gain admission, at least to premises that have door supervisors like city centre bars and nightclubs. So all of these things, I think, become possible if they can be justified as being in the interests of public health. And if operators don't enforce or administer these measures properly, then they could find themselves on the receiving end of licensing reviews. I also think we may well see the introduction of minimum unit pricing, which they have already in Scotland and in Wales. This is a measure which has long been fought for by the public health movement. It places a floor under the price of alcohol, and its basic objective is to make alcohol unaffordable by people on low incomes. So I think that's a possibility. I think also that the police have got very used to policing city centres that are largely empty at night. And yes, they have to deal with unlawful raves and illegal house parties and all the rest of it. But I don't think that they want to go back to a situation where city centre premises are open till 4, 5, 6, even 7 o'clock in the morning. So I would not be surprised to see the government reintroduce a system of permitted hours set nationally by Parliament, which restrict pubs perhaps to midnight, restaurants to midnight, and then late night bars and nightclubs maybe 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. closing in London. Something very much like the restrictions that existed under the 1964 Licensing Act, which preceded the one that we currently have. And all of these measures really would be measures that have been fought for a long time by public health, because they restrict access to alcohol, either in terms of the hours of its availability or in terms of its affordability by placing restrictions on price. So what does the sector need to do to defend its freedom to operate and the freedom of its customers to make personal choices? The sector needs to ensure that it can respond to the needs of the market. And to do that, our trade bodies need to start planning strategically now as to how they're going to resist these measures in the future. And to do that, they need to recognise that a standalone policy of lobbying government is not sufficient anymore. It's run out of road. And we've got to be able to engage with the drinker and with the wider public and get their support behind the sector. Because pubs, clubs, bars, restaurants are part of the social fabric of this country, and they're hugely important for what keeps people together and for helping to reduce the impact of loneliness and of mental health problems. So I think that that has got to be part of the way forward, because if we don't have a strategy in place to resist the onward march of public health inspired restrictions, then we will end up with a much reduced licensed retail and hospitality sector.